over-explanation is a symptom of Swadhisthana Chakra imbalance.
I think
we over-explain because we don't feel that we are worthy of our own words, of our own actions, of our own decisions, choices, meaning we are worthy of our own karma. Karma simply means our choices, decisions, actions. When we don't feel worthy of our own karma, that's when we over-explain.
Yeah.
Basically, we are talking out loud to others so that we can explain our choice to ourselves. Welcome to Bridgewalkers Tea. Grab your tea, pull up a chair, and join us in these conversations around practical spirituality, systemic change, and solopreneurship. I'm Manasi Kakade, a practical spirituality mentor and speaker for Bridgewalkers.
I'm Rose Pudzis, a storyteller and a professional talker.
A Bridgewalker is an analytical, critical thinker fascinated by spirituality.
According to Human Design, both of us are generators or alchemists with open throat center. What that means is that we love talking. And when we talk from a balanced place, our words, our expression, and our ideas bring learning and healing. We would love for you to join the conversation too. So don't hesitate to submit your comments or questions via the form. And the link is in the description. So if you're having fun and you're enjoying this experience, please take some time to review us and subscribe. That will help us reach more Bridgewalkers.
We hope that these candid, unfiltered conversations bring you new perspectives, spark an inspiration, and give you the confidence to shine in your own unique way of being, called dharma in Sanskrit. Because it's through your dharma that you are going to contribute to building new social systems and structures rooted in love, equality for all souls, and equity for the marginalized. And that's what being a Bridgewalker is all about. Are you ready? Let's begin. Hey listeners, Manasi here. The episode that you're about to listen is recorded sometime between August to early October of 2023. Earlier that year, in May 2023, one of my clients brought up a question in our group calls. She said, with the violent events that are happening in Haiti, I am so distraught emotionally that I don't know how to maintain my inner peace and harmony in order to contribute what is my work out in the world. And that was such a potent question that we started discussing and talking about that in our different calls, in our different groups of clients. Little did we know that what we were going through and preparing for is going to get a lot more intense. Come early October, when genocide of Palestinian people started ramping up, and we were all watching that on our phones, that senseless loss of humanity, the senseless violence, it was so overwhelming that I couldn't sustain. I had to take a break from my work. I was there for my existing clients, but in order to show up for them, I had to stop taking new clients, new work. That's why I couldn't edit these episodes at that time. I even question now, should I be even releasing these episodes? Is there any value to it? And I realize that there is, because spiritual principles don't change. We just learn through our experience how to apply them in a different context. And over the last 6 months, by experiencing the collective grief and loss and pain that we have all experienced, we have all become wiser. And these episodes are also a good reminder that just by living life, we are becoming wiser, we are healing, we are learning, and we are becoming better human beings when we are intentional about our spiritual seeking. So I share these episodes with you with knowing that some of the examples and references that we include here, we discuss here, may not be timely, or they may fall short of the wiser self, wiser you, that who is now listening to these episodes, as they feel short for the wiser us who created these episodes. But the spiritual principles are still timely, they apply, and in some cases you will find that they are exactly what you need to hear at this time. That's all I will say about this. Now enjoy the episode. We were saying we have to find our people.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, because there's a lot of things that I'm kind of like chewing on in my head, and one of them is like everything that's happening right now. I know people have been comparing since Trump about the comparison to Nazis. It very much feels like that, though. Like when you look, it wasn't like World War II just started. It was like all through the 30s there was hate of Jewish people for a very long time. Right. All that stuff. And then you just started to see in the 30s, like it got this buildup to where then it got, and this whole thing with Ron DeSantis, everything that's happening in Florida, in Tennessee, in Georgia, all this stuff, that the banning of books, like it's crazy, but I'm like, this is why these ideas are so dangerous, and why there is like, you should have no tolerance. And I think that's where I feel really frustrated, because it's like, it is an individual thing that upholds these ideas.
Right.
So you as an individual saying some hateful stuff, there should be no tolerance. You should be called out immediately. I'm sorry, but like, I don't even know. Like, I think I felt like, right, like how I was just saying, how I was like mentally confused or whatever, knowing my place. I always have been a loud person. I feel like I'm not somebody who's always trying to correct or like yell at people and be annoying that way. But when it comes to hateful speech, I can get really loud myself and be like, hey, like, no. But especially now, this is the time to call people out. Like, and there should be absolutely no tolerance for it, because it's like, these are the ideas that start to build, and it starts little. Somebody might not be all the way there, but they might be a little bit. And then somebody paints this picture and they're like, oh yeah, these people are the problem.
Right.
You have a little bit of homophobia in you. You have a little bit of that toxic masculinity. All of a sudden you're going to be convinced. Maybe you didn't. I don't think most people even thought about trans people most of the time, but now all of a sudden it's this topic, and a lot of people are like, oh yeah, this is a problem. You're right. I don't want my kids. And it's like, no, this is like hateful. This is how it gets spread. It's spread. There has to be a full stop to that. Like, tolerance.
And this is important for us to understand too, that tolerance is weaponized against loving people, right? Like, oh, if we are not tolerant of bigotry, then people are like, oh, show a little compassion, understand how their life was. And I'm like, of course, everybody has a difficult life. That doesn't give you the right to go and spew hatred on somebody else. So we are not going to be tolerant of bigotry. Tolerance, acceptance, these kind of terms, they should not be weaponized against the people who are fighting for social justice.
I love that you say that, because I feel like that's been thrown at me in this past, like, however many years, again, since Trump got into office. I've had conversations and people have thrown that at me, and I've had to take a step back to check myself, being like, oh, maybe I'm not seeing a full picture. And I've gotten to this point, and it's like, wait a minute, no. That's not it. Like, you're right. Of course, I'm naturally going to want to have to think about it, but no, it's the idea is wrong. And I knew that, but it's like things got muddled, and I feel like I'm embarrassed a little bit that like I kind of fell for that, because I like to think that, but things got so confusing for a while, and I had to be like, maybe I don't understand something. Maybe I'm not seeing something right. And now I've gotten here, and it's like, absolutely not.
No, exactly. And that's us internally gaslighting ourselves, because the rest of the system is toxic. So that's us internally gaslighting, saying like, oh, maybe I'm not seeing the whole picture. Oh, maybe I'm not being compassionate, or I'm not being loving enough, because we are the people who want to be kind, who want to be loving. And we want to maintain that identity in ourselves. So that is used against us to say like, oh, you're not being tolerant enough of bigots. I was like, yeah, no, that's not happening. That's zero tolerance policy right there. Like, that's not happening. That's not happening. And I have come to a point where I'm like, I will not let others use spiritual concepts of love, forgiveness, tolerance against me, who, or me or my clients or my audience who are like that. I'm not going to allow that happening in my presence, simply because you don't understand spirituality. I do. You aren't even going to the depths of understanding what tolerance is when you are spewing actual hatred against trans people. So where is tolerance then? Where is acceptance then? So I'm not even allowing that because I'm trusting my own spirituality to know that, hey, I actually get the spiritual concepts, you aren't. And this is not coming from like, oh, I'm better than you, or like I'm so like amazing. This is simply coming from trusting myself and being confident in who I am, because that means that I have to accept the spirituality is my realm. This is my area of expertise. So you cannot come in here and weaponize spiritual concepts against me.
Right.
Right? Because that's what you're doing. You're weaponizing those concepts against me because you are not liking the type of people that I'm creating safe space for. You are not liking that. So you are weaponizing it against me. That's not going to work.
Yes. And this is an interesting thing. And I don't know if I want to get too much into it because I don't know. I can't speak to shame that well. Maybe you can a little bit. But I think it's funny because I do think a lot about how shame shows up in people, how you will be willing to fight for something. I watched that show, Couples Therapy, on Showtime. I was in Mexico and I was flying home, and there was like, she's doing, or she's a psychotherapist, and but it's funny because you're watching some of these people, and some of them, you're like, oh my gosh, how are they even married to this person? They're so insufferable, right? And I was talking to one of my clients who's a therapist, and I was bringing this up because I'm like, there's some weird thing across the board. Like if somebody had cheated on somebody and that gets brought up, they always get mad that the other person is bringing it up all the time.
Right.
It's this odd thing, because I'm like, I can understand not wanting to always have to talk about it if like you're the one who but also it's this weird kind of like entitlement, like, well, I'm not going to have to talk about it. And it's like, they're the ones who has to process. You kind of have to sit in it for a little bit. Like, but they all put up this fight. And she brought up this like thing about shame. That's kind of what shame does. And I was like, oh, and I don't know why when she said that, something clicked in my head of like how you have to defend your position, or because you can't accept the wrong that you did. It's hard for people to sit with that. And I don't know if that translates to this, because bigotry and all that stuff, but there's something that like is familiar to me about that, because it's like you will go so hard and you're like, wait, it doesn't even make sense. Like you're not even making sense. It's like, and maybe that's the cognitive dissonance in it.
It is the cognitive dissonance, because your identity is like, I'm this good person, and somebody's showing you're racist, you're transphobic, you're homophobic or something, casteist. Somebody's showing you like, how can I be this person? I am this good person, right? And then that shame comes in, and then you get over invested in defending the position.
Yes.
Which is what we call in anti-racism education, we call it white fragility. Right. And that concept of fragility applies anywhere. And then that fragility actually turns into rage, because any idea of systemic supremacy is narcissism.
Yes.
Right. So that turns into a tantrum, that turns into a rage, because it comes from that shame and fragility, then tantrum, and then rage. So they are now overly invested in defending their view simply because they think we are superior. How can we do something wrong?
Yes.
Whereas somebody's pointing out like clearly, like you are doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And then the two ideas don't merge. And we, on podcast, we recently did an episode called Parental Trauma and Pradnya Aparadha. Pradnya means your intellect, and type of intellect that grasps new concepts. And this is episode number 29, if anybody wants to listen to it. But so what it means is that there is a crime you are committing against your intellect that is grasping new things. So when a new reality is presented to you, like, oh, you're being racist, and that's not a good thing to be, then when you do not have healing, you interpret that situation as if it's a crime against your intellect. So you don't interpret that situation accurately, saying, oh, I want to be a good person. I am a good person, but look at what I'm doing. I need to do something better. So let me get my anti-racism education, so I remain that good person, right? You don't make this connection. You instead say, who are you to call me racist? I must not be racist because I'm good.
Yes.
And that is crime against your intellect. That is the cognitive dissonance. So that's why more healing you get, you actually become comfortable owning who you are in your wounds as well as in your healing. And then wherever you see wounds, you say, oh, that has got to be changed. I need to heal. I need to expand into something. So you will go get your education. You will try to listen rather than speak your mind where you don't have an opinion. You shouldn't have an opinion on that matter just yet. Right? You need to so instead of just speaking and having the sense of entitlement that I should be able to speak and say whatever I want under and disguising is as freedom of speech, you actually understand like, oh, maybe I should shut up and listen to somebody else explaining their lived experience. And maybe I shouldn't even expect them to explain their lived experience. I can do my own education because guess what? There is Google.
Right.
Things exist. There are courses. There are people who are teaching this for a living. So I can go there and get that. But many people, bigots, aren't doing it because they have that Pradnya Aparadha constantly.
That's okay. I love that term. Okay, go on.
Right. And I was saying, like, this is where we go back again to weaponizing your wounds. Like, oh, do you know how hard my life has been? Like, what are you doing? Why are you weaponizing your wounds against us?
Right.
Like, just because you have had a hard life in some context doesn't mean you can be racist, casteist, Islamophobic, whatever else.
Right.
Like,
and there's creators that I've seen that have brought that up too. And they're like, there's a lot of people who've gone through really traumatic things and also did not turn out that way. So
exactly,
it is not this thing that like, because you had a hard time that equals that, and that you are allowed to like have an excuse. Right? Like there's compassion for anybody having any kind of trauma in their history, but your behaviors now, your hateful speech, whatever it might be, no, like that's not okay. And there's not like this excuse for that.
No, there is no excuse for that. And that's why it has to be intentional healing, because we have to understand that if we don't heal ourselves, we are going to hurt others.
Yes.
It's as simple as that. Sometimes it's in minor ways and sometimes it's in major ways.
Yes.
We just got to keep healing. And so anybody who says that, oh, we are not going to heal like that, and especially the bigots, they don't even have the humility to accept they need healing. Right? Because they perceive healing means there's something broken with them that needs to be fixed, not understanding that the concept of healing simply means going back to who you are before the wounds happened. Right? Healing is your unhurt self, going back to your unhurt self. So you weaponizing your trauma is one truth for you. And the other truth you are thinking for yourself, which is cognitive dissonance, is I don't need healing. You are holding, this is Pradnya Aparadha right here, because they don't merge together. If you are weaponizing your trauma, then you should also do something to heal that trauma.
Yeah.
But again, cognitive dissonance and Pradnya Aparadha, crime against your own intellect. So guess what? And that's why I was saying, like, we got to find our people.
Yes.
There is at this point, we have more bigots in the world than the people who are learning to change. The people who are changing, who are healing, who are expanding, who are setting different standards for how we should create communities, those people are still in minority. They are increasing in numbers, but they are still in minority. So we got to find our people, and we got to have the courage to set clear boundaries to say, these are not my people. I'm willing to sever ties with my friends, with my family, with whoever who is being bigots. I just cannot take it. For your own peace of mind, you won't be able to take it. Now, not everybody is going to be there in their journey. Sometimes you do have to put up with the family for some reason. So make the decisions that are comfortable for you, but at least start making some decisions. Don't put up with acquaintances. Don't put up with people who are just casually being sexist through sexist jokes or being anti-Semitic through Jewish jokes. Don't be that person who tolerates that in like social setting. Because without the critical mass of the people who are calling this stuff out and making the bigots feel uncomfortable, bigots won't change.
Right.
We got to understand, like, so this is what I learned from my recent experiences is making somebody feel socially comfortable is an emotional labor. And I'm willing to do that as emotional work only with people that are already vibing with me, that I know have good intentions, that are moving ahead in their journey. I'm willing to do that work for them. I will make them feel comfortable. But for bigots, no, they don't deserve my emotional labor to make them feel socially comfortable.
No, and I like the way you said it. They should feel uncomfortable. Yes.
They should feel uncomfortable. Right. a lot of bad things have been happening in the world because people who are neutral, people who are nice and kind and loving, have not said anything, have not made bigots feel uncomfortable, have not made abusers feel uncomfortable. So ultimately, through their silence, they're siding with the abusers. In their effort of being neutral or like calm and compassionate and understanding, they're actually siding with the abusers.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Exactly.
And that's why when you were saying that, oh, I just don't know, I'm feeling a little confused as to like when to stand up and not to, we just stand up. We speak up whenever we can. Of course, that takes a toll on us as well. Like it feels like we're constantly fighting a battle. So we have to see it, but we can always set boundaries. There are moments when we may not be able to speak up and we say, I need to excuse myself from this situation and get out. There are moments when you may not be able to remove a guest from your house because of cultural ties, but you may still make that guest feel uncomfortable in your own house. Or even if you cannot do any of that, you can just say like, hey, this is food, this is your thing, go eat your lunch. I don't have time to do this with you, right? You can pick your level of discomfort that you're comfortable with, level of their discomfort that you are comfortable with, but you can always set boundaries in your own ways. If not, like even if it comes to like removing yourself from the situation and do nothing else but remove yourself from the situation, right? Like you don't hang out, or you don't have to hang out with bigots, people who are racist, or somebody might say mildly racist or less racist, or it's like whatever you call it,
all of that stuff.
All of that.
And always and forever, and especially right now.
Especially right now. And if this is where this sentence makes sense, so you will understand it a different way, that if you're not actively anti-racist, then you are contributing to the system. Right? People say that you will hear this immediately in your anti-racism education, but sometimes it doesn't sink in as to what exactly are they saying. What they're saying is you don't have to be overtly racist in order to uphold the system. You have to be actively dismantling the system within yourself and outside. And this, I'm using example of racism, but it's the same thing with anti-caste, anti-sexism. I was going to say anti-Semitism, but anti-Semitism is actually the hatred. What I'm saying is dismantling the system of hatred requires you to do something. And if you're not actually doing it, if you're not dismantling that transphobia, homophobia inside and then outside in your circles, then you are contributing to upholding the system. And you have to now pick the side, because we are coming to a point in our collective evolution where we are going to have to pick sides.
Yes.
And the worst part is we are going to have to pick sides against sometimes, quite often, our loved ones. Right? So there could be some members of the family that are like that. There could be your friends from the past that are like that. You are now going to have to pick sides. And you're going to say, yeah, this bigotry will not go near me, near my house, in my circles, in my business. You are going to have to pick sides and pick the right one.
Oh gosh, no, it's like you just got me all like feeling, empowered by that and committed. I mean, I feel committed. I already, it's not that I don't feel committed. I just think it's a funny thing to look at this like whole like time period and like getting to this point right now and everything you're saying. And it's like, absolutely, like, yes, like it feels like, I don't know. I'm not trying to repeat everything you just said. I'm just trying to reiterate the fact that like you just like everything you just said is like exactly it. And find your people.
Find your people.
And stand strong in your conviction.
Yep.
When you hear something.
Right. Yes. And like Michael Lennox says at times, speak up even if your voice shakes.
Yeah.
Because the voice is going to shake. We have normalized bigotry for way too long. We have normalized abuse of different kinds for way too long. Like you go on TikTok and you recognize there are so many videos that show up as to how men behave with women and how most of it, a lot of it is just emotional abuse, verbal abuse or something. like weaponized incompetency. All of these concepts, I didn't even know these concepts before. And now we are talking with each other, understanding these concepts. We are recognizing, oh, I normalized. I didn't. My husband doesn't do that, fortunately. But I will tell you a story about my husband too, which is like, but anyway, in many cases, my husband doesn't do that. But I had normalized that to then give credit to my husband for being a good one. Like, then it's like, oh, you're so amazing. You're so amazing. I was like, this is how everybody should be. Like, you shouldn't get kudos. Of course, I'm appreciative of my husband, given the system and the shackles of the system that he has broken. I'm grateful for that. I'm very grateful. Very love him dearly. But again, there is a part of me that is like, I shouldn't be thanking you for just being a good person. Like, why am I thanking you? Do you wake up every day and thank me for this? Right. He does, actually. We do have gratitude thing going. We do have our gratitude thing going. But the point is, most husbands who are good aren't doing that, or maybe they are doing it, but it's like that should be the bare minimum. Like, you're being good is bare minimum. Good human being should be the bare minimum. We have normalized so much emotional abuse, weaponized incompetency, women doing emotional labor in head cis relationships. We have normalized so much of that we feel like anything just slightly better is worthy of praise.
Yes.
This is a sad state of patriarchy.
And
here's the funniest thing. Like, something happened in our house where my husband was really empathetic. He is this loving, nurturing type of person. And he said to me, it's like, sometimes I just feel like I'm not even a man, I'm a woman. And I'm thinking here like, oh, gender dysphoria, because like, that's what I'm thinking. And I asked him, is like, are you talking gender dysphoria? And he's like, no, it's not that deep. I'm talking like all these qualities, empathy and love and healing and like everything else that he was doing at that time, nurturing. It seems like those are not men's qualities. And I was like, oh, dang. I was like, Rishi, you are getting the wrong message in this. The message here isn't that you are a woman. The message is that you are an evolved man. You are the type of man that women are looking for. And because they don't find them, they're mostly living single and happy.
At 100%. Yes. 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 I see this all the time. I know I got into this like conversation a while ago with somebody. Okay. And I was talking about a movie. And they had the character Justin Long in there, whom I like. I like horror movies. Well, not so much anymore, but I used to. And he was in like a couple horror movies that I liked. And somebody was like, oh, who's that? And this person was like, oh, you wouldn't like him. He's like a beta male. And I was like,
that, yeah.
Okay, so just the fact that you're using that term, I get it. People talk about alpha male, beta male. It's been this conversation. But anybody I know that uses that, like, no. Like, the fact that we're even using that to describe qualities of a male, like, that's the
red flag. That's a red flag that the person also is reading about what alpha male should be like.
Right, exactly. Yeah. It became its own big conversation. I don't have to get into all that, but they were like, oh yeah, an elder, because then they're like, what's a beta male? And she's like, well, she's the person she's talking to, she's like, we're into alpha males, whatever. And I was like, oh, gross. I was like, give me a beta male any day.
Exactly.
Exactly. By your standards of what you're describing is somebody who's in touch with their feelings, or like, to me, and I know everybody's gonna have a different definition, but it's like, I can't stand. So if you're going to talk about those two terms, first of all, there's great qualities within an alpha male, confidence or whatever. Sure, confidence is good. Beta male, what is that? It's like, it doesn't make sense. People are not these things.
They're not.
You have a spectrum, and you're not allowing people to access certain parts of themselves because somehow they're in these categories. And that is the idea. Then, like, no, I value somebody who is in touch, because I want to connect to a human being,
right?
Whoever that might be, not just as like the male version of something. Like, that's weird, and it's doing such a disservice to people, men and women. Like, it's so terrible. That idea is so terrible.
It is terrible, and the worst part is, it's telling growing men, boys, that I got to be like that toxic version of masculinity.
Yes.
And the confidence you're talking about, even that is not true confidence. That's just sense of entitlement. That I will just get what I want, and that is perceived as confidence. Like, keep that to yourself. I don't need you to be that kind of confident.
No. And okay, let me just clarify when I say that. It's only because when they're like, what do you think an alpha male is? I was like, arrogant, cocky, full of himself. And then they were like, no, I think of somebody who's confident. It's like, it's funny. I'm like, I know that's how that comes off to you, but to me, that's an arrogant version. Like, if we're using the term of alpha male, like, your version of confidence is arrogance.
Arrogance. Exactly. And that's what other people perceive alpha male as, like, oh, confidence and charming, whatever. That's Pradnya Aparadha. You are not recognizing, because you have normalized the abuse so much that you're not recognizing what they are doing. And again, I'm not saying true leader as alpha male. Like, I'm just saying, like, this toxic definition of masculinity that some people call alpha male. Right? That's what I'm referring to. So that toxicity, it's like, in datings, there are some women who are like, ooh, bad boy, that feels really adventurous. And I was like, since when? Like, why are you going into that kind of adventures? I'm perfectly happy having a stable, boring relationship.
Yes.
Right? Like, that's what I want in my life. I want stability. I don't want drama. My adventures are completely different. Yeah, I don't need your adventures like this. Like, let's see who is on the the scale of fighting today. Like, which scale of fighting are we on? Who needs that adventure? Right?
No.
So another thing, I recently heard this experience of a woman who went on a date, and she was telling me that this person, she clearly said, I don't even want to go out for, like, they were going in the park for a walk, and she's like, yeah, I'm not hungry, I don't want to go for food, right? This person's like, no, I eat so much food, I need to go and go to a restaurant. So she's like, okay, sure, yeah, sure, fine. So they are trying to go to a restaurant. This man, who is like toxic alpha male type of person, apparently, not maybe to that level, but still to an extent, he's like, I don't really, the woman says that I don't like Thai or seafood, right? I don't want to go to these restaurants. This person chooses Thai and seafood as two options to pick from. I'm like, is this the type of bad boys you want? Like, they're not listening to you. They're not being empathetic. Like, and this is on, like, first date. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Like, if that was the first date, and that if I said that and then somebody came back and said, how about these places? First, I'd be like, ha ha, funny. And if they persisted, I'd be like, all of a sudden I'm never available.
Right, exactly.
Like, no, absolutely not. No.
And the worst part was not worse, but like, there was some aspect to it that I had to basically, like, coach this woman on to say, listen. She's like, oh, how do I gently let him know that I'm not interested? I was like, at this point, what do you mean gently? Like, you can just say this is misaligned and close the connection, right? And she's like, no, but I want to be kind to that person. And I'm like, listen, sweetheart, here is where you are weaponizing kindness against yourself. Setting boundaries is not unkind. You telling somebody we are not aligned is not unkind. It is a kind thing to do, to say, listen, move on. You live with your life. I am living with my life. We are not aligned. Like, so then basically it was like, when I tell my clients, sometimes potential clients come in, I was like, no, this is not the right fit for you. Is this kind or is it unkind? And she's like, it's kind. So then what you are doing the same thing, right? We're doing the same thing. As I am assessing this potential client, can they be my client? You are assessing, can I have some kind of relationship with this person? That's what you are assessing. So if you cannot, let them know that right away. And there doesn't have to be any emotional There doesn't have to be any emotional charge with it. It's just like, we are misaligned. This is not going to work. Yes. It's good for both people to know up front, then you just move on. Exactly. If you have any little feelings because maybe you were excited and you feel let down, like, that's normal. That's right. Okay. But it's still good, know up front and move on. I can't tell you how many times, Manasi, when we're talking about this, I can't tell you how many times when I was out in my 20s and I would go out, that it's funny because it'd either be guys that maybe were approaching me, and I'm not like cold and mean, people approach you, and I know it's like, that's the whole thing, and like, I'm not trying to like
put somebody down like unnecessarily. But there were some guys that would be so persistent, right? Like, and you'd be like, no, and you'd be polite a couple of times and then no, or like it was a group of us girls and then they'd keep coming and they'd keep coming. And I know probably after maybe the 5th time, I would be very clear and I would say, no, we said no. That's it. They don't like that.
They don't like that.
The guys who are persistent, because it's like, I feel like there's certain guys that were like trying to, like, the break you down a little bit, the more persistent you are, right? And then when you're very clear, because you're kind, you're like, no, you're not trying to hurt somebody's feelings. You're like, oh, maybe they've had a few drinks, whatever. You're making up all these excuses because people, there are, there's a random group of people. Not everybody's trying to be a jerk,
Right.
But there are people who are. And then when you do get clear with them, I can't count how many times this would happen. They would get a look. They didn't want to be challenged by me. They didn't want to be challenged by a woman.
Right.
They don't feel like they deserve that, even though you've clearly stated no so many times. And some of them even want to get aggressive. Luckily in those situations, I've never had anything happen. And I realize, like, I've had like guy friends in the past being like, you're being reckless. And it's like, no, because who's gonna come? The thing is when I would do that, like, I can't make this as a recommendation, but it's like they didn't like it, but they would walk away. Maybe they felt humiliated. But it's funny because what do you think was gonna happen later when you're just polite? That they just keep pushing and pushing and they politely do something to you, like, absolutely not. Like, I feel like now I'm like, I have this aggression and it's like, I have to like take a deep breath real quick because I'm like channeling some of that from back then. And I would get so angry. We had one quick other story. I was sitting at a table with my friends and my girlfriends. And there was one of my girlfriends dated this guy or something happened and she turned him down. We were sitting at this place. We're in our 20s. They started throwing food at our table. They happened to show up. This is a completely separate incident. Like, so whatever happened with her and this guy happened. And like, we just happened to be out and this group of guys came in and they sat and they started throwing food at us. Like, we're in our 20s. They started throwing food. And I was like, are you kidding me right now? I was laughing. She obviously felt humiliated, but I was like, what a bunch of idiots. I was like, we're going to leave. Don't worry. We're just going to leave. We're not even going to engage because it's not worth it. We leave, take care of the bill, leave. I'm walking down the street. One of those guys comes up to me and he's like, hey, just want to see what you're doing. Maybe I can get your number. Are you like, I'm telling you.
Wow.
Right. I would say like, this is one of those situations where I'm saying like, this is like not all guys, right? Like, I know people say, but there are so many times that people have that kind of attitude. You just sat at a table with your friends who threw food at us. And now you're going to come up and try to ask for my number. And it was like comical in a way, because it's like, you are clueless.
You are clueless.
If you're not clear, sometimes I'm not trying to say I'm not trying to come across blaming or anything like that or victim blaming at all. Because I know it's hard. I know this whole thing when you're talking about kindness, I know it's hard. I see this with my friends. I've been in those situations too. But like, when you're not clear, those people, they like to take advantage of that. They know that is one of the things that they use against you.
Exactly.
Like we're talking about, that's exactly the game they play.
And that's where that sense of entitlement comes from, that if I ask her like 5 times, her kindness will give in maybe, and she may go out on like one date at least, or whatever else, even more nefarious intentions than that. But that sense of entitlement of men in this wounded patriarchy is like that narcissistic sense of entitlement that comes through systemic privilege. Mm-hmm. And they are so disconnected from themselves that they don't even understand that if I'm throwing food at somebody, how am I even appreciating that woman? Like, is that appreciation I'm showing for her, the woman that I may potentially want to go on date with? Right. What is your thinking? They're so disconnected from themselves. And that's why they can never connect with a woman, who are like, oh, what do you mean you won't go on a date with me? I just threw food at you. That's it. It's not that big a deal. Don't be that serious. Don't take this like you are not clearly lighthearted. Like turning all of that on women.
Right.
Like, oh my
Just
God.
why I have to laugh, because it's like, it's funny to me that you are that clueless that you would just do something like that. And that's just like a marker of where people's heads are, which is why I don't feel bad about not being kind in those situations. Like, because you're not giving me that same benefit of the doubt. You expect that from me, but you don't expect that from yourself. And I never want to engage with somebody who puts that burden on me to always be in that position, and never will ever question how they're treating me. Never.
Absolutely. And here's the thing. The moment could be where you may feel like physical lack of safety or insecurity, and then you got to do what you got to do in that moment. Like, there are times when I see like murder mysteries and I tell Rishi, like, why is this woman fighting at this point? At this point, I would have given up, like not internally, but externally shown the person that I would have just given up at this point. I will do what you want me to do, and then I will find my way to fight back later.
Yes.
Right. Like, I want to be alive in this moment.
Yes.
So that I can fight back later. Right. Like, so whatever you got to do for your physical safety in that moment, you got to do it. At that point, be kind. If you like, that's what you're pretending to be, then that's what you need to do, then do it. But you don't need to be kind is the point that we are making.
Yes.
You don't need to be kind if you have that as an option.
Right.
You obviously have to watch out for your physical safety first, but then you don't need to be kind. And this is, again, it's not even that we don't need to be kind. Being kind to them is letting them know that, hey, this is misaligned. This is not going to work. That is actually kindness. That is kindness.
Right. It is kindness. It
is kindness.
Is. You're being upfront and honest. And that's showing a certain amount of respect too. You know, like, I respect this interaction, and like, just be upfront about something.
Right.
So I know I spoke just passionately about that. So I do want to make sure, like, however I was coming across is not victim blaming towards women or how people are handle themselves in the situation. Because I know it gets sticky or whatever. I just wanted to share those experiences as, like, when you're talking about this, like, that their mental place is in a completely different place than you are. So you have to carry that burden of feeling like you're hurting somebody's feelings.
Exactly. But Rose, you didn't say anything that was like victim blaming.
Okay, I know, because
you were very clear in saying that you are like on the side of women. And if somebody doesn't get that after this point, then we have to say, like, that's their Pradnya Aparadha.
Okay.
Right. Like, we have to let people have sovereignty. We have done episodes on sovereignty. So we need to let people have their own sovereignty to see what they see in this conversation. But you weren't victim blaming. You were clearly saying that it is unfortunate that women feel compelled to still be a certain way, despite the sense of entitlement of men, and that men can then take advantage of it. So women, as women, we need to have our like guard up. We need to have understanding. What are we getting ourselves into? And we have to be mindful of it. We have to be watchful of it.
I think when I talk sometimes about those things, like, all of a sudden a lot of those emotions come back, and it's not like I'm blacking out, but I'm channeling this from this place where it's almost like, well, what just came out of me? So that's why it's like, I want to make sure. So thank you, because I'm just like, I get into those and I'm like, I remember being in that position, and I just, all that comes through, you know, and I black out and talk, you know?
Right.
That's all. But thank you. That's all. Make sure.
One of the other lessons that I have learned in like last month or so is that no matter what you say, there are always going to be some people who will take it in the wrong way.
You're right. Yes.
So if we haven't given our vibe until now, and if people aren't yet sure, our audience isn't yet sure what perspective you're talking on, well, guess what? Then they aren't ready to hear what else we talk about anyway.
You're absolutely right. Thank you, Manasi.
Yeah.
Just own what I'm saying. That's it.
Right. And that's why we did an entire episode on Pradnya Aparadha to explain how, when we are wounded ourselves, we see something from the lens of wounding. And that is an inaccurate interpretation of the situation. So if now somebody is seeing from their own wounding that Rose was victim blaming, it is very unfortunate, but now it's their healing to do. It's not on you, because you weren't victim blaming.
I need to listen to this episode.
You got to, Rose.
I need to listen to this. This is for me. I feel like I gotta listen to this episode. Okay, I will.
No, that concept makes so much sense, because there have been moments when I have gaslit myself, like, oh, I must have said something when I hadn't said anything. Like, fortunately, I had recordings where I could go back and see it, and I hadn't said anything that that person interpreted. I mean, there were not even literal words that would give them that interpretation. So I'm like, then I cannot even correct this.
I feel like we're hitting on something deep in me. I'm going through a healing moment literally right now as we're going through this, because like I've noticed I've been doing that a lot lately, and I keep thinking, why do I had a friend who said that, like, you don't need to explain yourself so much. And I was like, I know I do that. And like everything you're saying, like, I'm like, we're talking about these subjects, but I think there's something deeper that's happening to me right now. So I'm just gonna like pause and say thank you, because I'm like, yeah, why do I keep doing that? I need to check in with myself.
Over explanation is a symptom of Swadhisthana Chakra imbalance.
I think
we over explain because we don't feel that we are worthy of our own words, of our own actions, of our own decisions, choices, meaning we are worthy of our own karma. Karma simply means our choices, decisions, actions. When we don't feel worthy of our own karma, that's when we over explain.
Yeah.
We want to explain the choice to, basically we are talking out loud to others so that we can explain our choice to ourselves.
Yes.
That's what is happening. So over-explanation is simply a symptom of Swadhisthana Chakra imbalance.
Which I feel like this has been my thing before.
Yes, it has been. So it's just a matter of like continued healing, then that over-explanation actually goes down.
Yes. Yeah. And I just feel like I'm getting to this point now where I'm like, I feel like I needed to over-explain, and now I'm like, I don't want to do that. I'm ready to let that go.
Excellent. So you are claiming your self-worth, like, hey, these are the choices I'm making.
Now it's becoming a habit that I just need to be aware of and like correct myself, because I don't think I was ready to let it go before. I think I was like stuck in that place for a long time because of what you're saying. But like I feel like I know I'm ready to step out of that. It's just now I have to like be aware of my habits. And I'm going to say this ties in right to the beginning of our conversation about finding your voice, finding your people, even if your voice shakes, speaks, because I think that could be one of the places where the confusion comes from when I would catch myself, right? Like having to over-explain. So it's funny because now I feel like this is tying into this whole subject that we're talking about too. And one of the things where it's like, no, for me to do that, I need to step into my own.
Yes.
And let go.
And let go. Because you are not going to attract your people until you have the sense of worthiness that I am who I am, and whoever is aligned with me will come to me.
Yes.
Right. So as you start speaking up, even when your voice shakes, others know what your values are. Others know where you stand. So those who are misaligned will maybe criticize you. They will go away from you. They will break ties with you, or you may have to do that for them. But those who are aligned are going to be like, oh, now that's the Rose I want to be friends with.
Yes.
That's the Rose I want in my family. That's the Rose I want as my client or as my mentor. Right. So that's when we start shifting, because we start shifting our external reality because we have internally shifted our reality. And which is why, honestly, I think the name of the podcast should be, the title of this podcast should be Find Your Voice, Find Your People.
I love that.
Because that's exactly what we are saying, that we are going to have to speak up. We are going to have to take a stand. And then those people who want what we have to offer will find us. And we will find them. Because we are not hiding behind anymore, behind our lack of self-worth, that, oh, I don't know, I should maybe make a racist feel a little bit comfortable so that my life becomes easier a little bit, right? And we don't have to do that. We don't have to put up with bigots like that. We don't have to make them socially comfortable. We don't have to make them comfortable when they're in our presence. We can set boundaries and go away from the situation, right? One of these classes that I'm taking, it's called Art of Gathering. And it's a class by Priya Parker. And this woman, she's so amazing in saying, like, Art of Gathering is about connection. You as a guest and as a host, you are both looking to form a connection. But when you invite people that don't vibe with each other, then that's not going to be connecting, right? So she calls something called generous exclusion. Generous exclusion is really giving people an opportunity to take themselves out of that setting, whether it's a party, whether it's an event, whether it's a formal event, professional, personal event, giving people enough idea about what to expect, the vibe of the event, so that they can exclude themselves if it's not right for them. And then you excluding some people automatically through the invite because you know they're not going to be the right people for this vibe that you're cultivating. Yeah. And she calls it generous exclusion. And I really like it because generous exclusion, in my business, I apply that principle very much so. Generous exclusion is about maintaining a loving and connecting and healing space for the people who are there. We aren't worried about who isn't here and what they are feeling and what's going on with them. Who is here, make them feel comfortable. Mm-hmm. And sometimes in our businesses, what happens is we think about like, oh, who is my ideal client? Let them get them in. And we are going after some future without wondering, who am I making comfortable right now? Yes. And who is misaligned right now that I got to remove from my place, that I got to exclude from my place, so that whoever remains aligned with me are the ones who are connecting with each other, they're healing with each other, they're loving each other. So this generous exclusion is such a great concept. And it just doesn't apply to art of gathering. This is about community. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And that's why sometimes people are like, oh, is it okay for Indian people to have their own get-togethers? Why is it not okay for white people to have their own get-togethers? Wow. And I'm like, again, generous exclusion, people. Like, generous exclusion is where we are at with this. So. That is such a tired, old, like, could people just stop saying that? It's like, right. So like, and if you're thinking like this at this point, you are like, you are really not understanding and listening. You really got to do your education more. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So, oh my gosh. Well, this was wonderful. I really do feel like this really gave me some like energy, this conversation. Like, it is an important conversation to have, but I feel like you really, like, I feel like there were some things that were talked about that really clarified where we should be and how we can create those communities. So I feel really like, I don't know if empowered is the right word, but I kind of do feel a little empowered. Excellent. I'm so happy to hear. So people, here's the thing. You know by now what kind of community we are cultivating in this, like, my business, Bridgewalkers Collective. If you want to be part of those communities, consider joining Bridgewalkers Playground, Bridgewalkers. I don't think I have ever advertised Bridgewalkers Club, but I think it's the right time to say that there is such a thing. Mm-hmm. Bridgewalkers Club is this experiment we started basically just before the pandemic, where we are like, if we are to get in touch with the type of people that we vibe with, how would that come around, right? And then it worked out well, because then pandemic happened and social justice movements started being on fire. And through that, we understood, having a community of like-minded people was really, really important for us to get through the pandemic and get through our contributions to social justice. Because when we were feeling lonely in different parts of our lives, like somebody feeling like I'm the only anti-racist in my church type of person, somebody else feeling like, I'm really living in this rural area, nobody is really talking about anti-racism. Somebody feeling like, oh my gosh, I didn't understand, like my uncle who was like this was so racist. I just realized that at this Thanksgiving type of person. We all came together in a small, cozy group of people, and we call it Bridgewalkers Club. And that has been really helpful. And now we have formed ties in ways that are really just, we are there for each other, right? So very strong sense of community, even though there's a handful of people. So what I am thinking is, like, this discussion brought forward to me and my entire experience in the last 1 month or so, the need for finding like-minded people. Mm-hmm. So I think I'm going to open up. Bridgewalkers Club was open only by invitation. So if you have already proven your vibe, then you will come there. But if we want to form more of these groups, I think I'm going to open it up now to people to say, hey, do we want to form more of these groups? We will still check the vibes. We will still keep it small and cozy. But how are we then going to organize this effort? So if you want to be a part of this kind of effort, then please, maybe I will make a form or something, add a link there. you can be, and then we can figure out the details of how to set another group like this. And maybe if there is enough interest, multiple groups, we will see. But you do need in these moments really the support and community of the people that are thinking like you, that are having the same worldview like you. And if you're an entrepreneur who wants that, then Bridgewalkers Playground is the place for you. And if you want one-on-one mentorship with me, then Bridgewalker Visionaries Incubator. I develop leaders, visionaries, and change makers who will lead this world in a different way. Not what we have seen before in control and authority, but in a loving way where our world needs to go. So those are the leaders I am set out to develop through building their unshakable internal foundation, where they will speak even if their voice shakes. And then we reduce the moments when their voice shakes. That's what we do. So if that's what you're interested in, then join, apply to Bridgewalker Visionaries Incubator. I'm taking on new clients now.